Jackie to say a few words about WeWork. How many WeWork members do we have here? Well, Jackie has to do her job here. You guys got to come to WeWork. So here, come Jackie.
Hey guys, welcome to WeWork. For those of you who don't know what WeWork is, we are a community space for collaborators, innovators, and creators. We offer office space, and if any of you would like a tour, have any questions, see Brand Central, let me know. We'll be fun all night, and I hope you enjoy the panel. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jackie. So I know I'm competing with the pizza in the back, but there's lots of seats right here in the front, as always, and in the middle, but please grab a seat. So thank you very much for coming, especially with the tree lighting happening a few blocks from here. So the goal of Robot Lab is to bring together all the stakeholders of the autonomy economy. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. And so from investors to innovators, policymakers to academics, because too often VCs, we're just talking to ourselves.
In Grand Central, because we're talking about the future of cities and we're talking about the future of transportation, and we are at the heartbeat of our transit system here right at Grand Central. And so I wanted to ask a question by show of hands. How many of you are familiar with smart cities and elements of what makes a smart city? And how many of you have seen an autonomous vehicle or have had the opportunity to be in one? And so, there's always a big difference, because what we see is that technology is lagging behind the policy, and implementation, is not keeping up with innovation. And so I experienced that at the Jamaica Bid. When I started a few years ago, I was disappointed to know that we did not have broadband internet to our over 300 businesses downtown. And numerous meetings, calls, white papers, pleas to get high-speed internet to a very busy area in New York City. After years of work, we finally were able to find relief at the state level. And thankfully in 2018, we'll be closing the digital divide for Jamaica. We care about standards, which is why our CEO, who unfortunately he's getting an award tonight, he wasn't able to be here, he's chairing the IEEE Smart Cities Council. And what we've done is put together a playbook. It's a guide for technology and process to build a smart city, P2784, so that we can have standards that can be followed beyond, beyond municipal limits, and so that solutions aren't different and siloed as you move from neighborhood to neighborhood, borough to borough. And we also care about impact. And so that's why we launched the Regional Smart Cities Initiative, to give leaders frameworks to build smart and connected communities with solutions that reach beyond the municipal limits through collaboration. And we're focused on building communities that are 100% connected, 100% mobile, and 100% resilient. Regional challenge from USDOT. And together we brought together a number of our stakeholders, University of Cincinnati, Ohio Transportation Department, the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Alliance, and other state, county, and local stakeholders. And what we're doing now is launching a statewide initiative focused on advanced and autonomous transportation research and implementation. Here in New York, there's also been a significant amount of progress. We've been working with the governor's office on advertising a pilot program that they're funding, and there's an open RFP for right now. This year, the state took a step in the right direction with legislation, and they're looking for more players to join the mix. And so right now, you may have seen that one was announced recently, and we would love to bring you into the fold. If you're interested, please come and speak with us after, because they're actively looking for more players in this space. And as you know, any pilot in New York is so important because of the data that we can collect here. And we've also this year had a chance to work in Washington, D.C., where the transportation conversation was around equitable transportation and accessibility. We co-hosted the Smart Mobility Panel at their Inclusive Smart Cities conference focused on equitable access to regional mobility solutions. And we're working also with the World Bank on identifying and pursuing smart city strategies focused on youth and education and innovation. Internationally and outside the US, we've been working on resilient infrastructure and IoT in developing regions for disaster relief with projects in India, Nepal, Puerto Rico, and British Virgin Islands. And so the thought leadership community that we're building, and we would love for you to become part of, is helping leaders to research, plan, fund, and build smart cities and connected communities. We also previewed a web-based platform meant to integrate opportunities and information to connect users with solutions, resources, teaming partners, and unique business intelligence. So what are we planning for 2018? We're launching a Smart Sister Cities for Government teaming collaboration. In fact, Harlem and Harlem, New Amsterdam has teamed up with between Amsterdam and the Borough of Manhattan around IoT solutions for better delivery of government services and ubiquitous Wi-Fi. Public and dynamic transportation options, and help with social mobility as well as expand and grow regional economic development initiatives. And embedded resilience will ensure that we don't lose sight of the cyber and physical security issues, and that we look at it through a lens of sustainability, social, economic, and environmental. So if we're going to integrate the Internet of Things into our systems and our infrastructure, then one statement is very true. Smart cities require cooperation and standards, and they must be driven by community needs, and we need leaders that are dedicated to impact and outcomes. So in closing, I'd like to introduce our Chief Strategy Officer, Mitch Kominsky, who's here with us today. He is actually responsible for a lot of the federal legislation during his years on the Hill as the Senior Advisor to the Emerging Technologies Committee and on the Cyber Security Committee on the House side. And he's laid a lot of the groundwork for the autonomous and intelligent transportation that we're going to be seeing coming online today. He's shifted his lifestyle from the halls of Congress to building out our platform, and he's going to be introducing you to Valerie, who's the personal AI assistant that we have for you. And I'd like him to talk about the federal role of AV as well. So thank you, and I'd like to introduce Mitch.
Hi everyone, my name is Mitch Kominsky. It's a pleasure to be here and see a community that's really focused on these particular emerging technologies. I'm going to be very brief because I know we have a Q&A and other distinguished speakers. But briefly, in terms of what Venture Smarter is doing, we're really focused on smart cities and building the community, and particularly with early adopters, which this audience is, for the most part, I can imagine a reflection of that. So for anyone who's interested, we'd love for you to join our beta platform. My email is mitch@venturesmarter.com. Rhonda is Rhonda@venturesmarter.com. And really the Smart Cities AI Assistant is really intended to be data-driven. And what we've noticed is we work with a lot of governments, we work with a lot of Fortune 10 companies, emerging tech startups, and universities. And everyone has a different need and different place in this ecosystem. So we really work with a lot of different people, and our new AI system will be able to help with that. And then really turning to the AV side of things, which is the crux of this event. I've worked for a number of years with a lot of major companies in this space, and the very interesting thing, I would say just a few comments, is that the technology has been there for many years. Really, one of the critical problems is that the government is not there. Now, one of the challenges, right, now we have technologies, and we see a lot of the car companies, I don't want to plug anyone in particular, but they've actually been coming to Capitol Hill since 2009. And they're also been one of the key components if autonomous vehicles is going to succeed, particularly in smart cities, but overall, especially in New York, is that the regulations have to be very clear and balanced. And one of the many issues that lawmakers have been grappling with, and a lot of startups and companies, I encourage them to get involved in these processes, but there's legal and moral questions. On the legal side, there's insurance, there's liability, and a whole number of issues. But the very interesting part is that Congress has been thinking about this. And even as early as 2015, which is a few years ago, in the FAST Act, which is the Fixing America's Surface Transportation, there was a section, 6004, which was specifically targeted at funding AV technologies at $60 million. Now the federal government is working to really drive these regulations, and in 2016 the Obama administration put out the first set of guidelines, which is voluntary, and the current administration released a second cut in September 2017, and they're working on an additional one for this next year. So I'll close with that and just say that I would encourage you to look into that and get involved, because you can shape the process if you become involved at this stage.
Is building up their first or later stage smart city initiatives. How do you think about cities that are being built from the ground up, like stuff a lot of tech executives are doing in Arizona, or places in Africa, South America, Southeast Asia that are building, that are skipping the whole like wired industry, and they're just going to some of those futuristic things that we can do. So they're skipping the stuff that we have, the more archaic things that we have in the US. So how do you advise people going from the ground up and building their first versions of this?
They have the opportunity to leapfrog, a lot of the challenges that we are facing with the legacy systems that we have in more established cities, and we're in touch with them. We're just hoping that they use the standards and the frameworks so that they're not, again, building up in a silo approach that we won't be able to necessarily learn from, and be able to take the testing from that data to use for other neighborhoods and cities and countries.
No, I think we have another question. I don't have too much to add.
This is, the leading technologist, on the campus there. I think we have one last question here over there.
Hey, yeah, so just a quick question. You mentioned that some of these companies like Waymo and Uber already have seats at the table in the federal government, and then it's not a new conversation to them. Now, is there, for us who don't have that kind of big representation, is there an advocacy group that we should be joining so that we're not disenfranchised in the whole process? Is that what you provide? Should we be on the IEEE board of standards, and is there a defined method by which that will be converted into some format by which the legislators will be able to understand it and process it and get form an accord? Or what's the right process for it all?
Put you in front of the right players to get ahead of those conversations around the legislation that's coming down the pipeline. And really it is about matching and connecting you with those right stakeholders so that you're influencing and shaping the policy of the future.